and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another fantastic installment from very high above all the bombastic twits in the Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Friday. Now, there's only a few times when you realize exactly why you've been having political arguments, and today on the program, we're going to talk about many of them. It's Open Line Friday. That's right, my friends. Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics Live. This is the day of the week where we talk about whatever you want to talk about. I don't really care what it is. If there's something on your mind that you want to opine about, you just give me a call. And, you know, I don't think that my audience really understands the grave threat that I put this program under every Friday. Because, I should let that one play out. But on Friday, we talk about whatever you want to talk about. And most of the time during the week, it's kind of a Dave Talkracy. You know, you have to talk about whatever I want to talk about. Not on Friday. So if there's something on your mind, the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989 is the number here in the studio. It's Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics. We begin with a revelation. You see, we all wonder exactly why we get into all these political arguments and why the opposition keeps coming. Well, now we have an answer. Being a conservative is unconstitutional. I know. It came as a gigantic shock to me as well. But as it turns out, a judge has decided that, we can't support conservative values because they're just not constitutional. Let's see. I think this was from the Daily Mail. Judge blocks school board from removing explicit books, saying it's unconstitutional to follow conservative values. And I quote, "A school board in Colorado cannot remove sexually explicit, profane, and transgender books from school libraries because the school board is conservative," according to a federal judge touted as the first openly lesbian judge west of the Mississippi. Now, I know what you're saying. This might be a reason why the judge ruled the way that she did, but not so, my friends, because being a conservative is flatly unconstitutional. Well, maybe in Colorado anyway, but not in the grand state of Wyoming. In our Constitution, Article 7, Section 20 says, Agent 29, maybe you should have a microphone. There you go. See, we don't know what's going on here on Open Line Friday.
Sometimes you just get emphatic about something and everything else leaves your mind.
Well, I was scared because I thought you were going to yell into the microphone.
I considered it. The duty of the legislature to protect and promote the health and morality of people, as the health and morality of people are essential to their well-being and to the peace and performance of the state, it shall be the duty of the state excuse me, I misread that. It shall be the duty of the legislature to protect and promote these vital interests by such measures for the encouragement and temperance and virtue, and such restrictions upon
Temperance,
vice and immorality of
vice,
every sort are deemed
immorality?
necessary to public welfare. Two things.
Wow.
One, this judge was in Colorado, so the Wyoming State Constitution
Right.
doesn't apply.
Right. Unfortunately.
Um, Two, think about when this was written and what did those words mean to the people
Yeah.
that wrote those words?
Exactly right. Vice and immorality. So in Wyoming, evidently, it's okay and it's entirely constitutional to talk about conservative values, but not in Colorado. The article continues. The ACLU's Colorado chapter filed a suit on behalf of two minors, the NAACP Wyoming State Conference and the Authors Guild, claiming that the school district engaged in viewpoint discrimination when removing the books. The judge granted a preliminary injunction in March, forcing Elizabeth School District, Elizabeth is a suburb southeast of Denver, to restore the books. Judge Charlotte Sweeney second-guessed the school district's objections to the book's contents, calling the objections pretextual. I don't even know what that means, and condemning the removals as partisan, because the school board members had discussed following their, quote, conservative convictions when debating the removal of the books.
Couldn't you just flip that argument and say that leaving the books there is also a prejudice from one side of the argument?
Well, you could, if anything made sense in Colorado. But in
There you go.
Colorado, it is only being conservative that is unconstitutional.
Not just Colorado, but whenever you try to apply logic or a simple argument to liberalism, it collapses.
Yes, every single time. I posted something in a group last night. And I mean, okay, it was kind of a funny meme, but it said that extreme leftism causes everyone to turn into a 70-year-old woman. And I thought it was wonderfully funny because the picture was just this crumpled up 70-year-old woman. And all the liberals went absolutely bat crap crazy on me.
Is her name Karen?
Well, it should be. I'm thinking we should change her name to Karen. But apparently, if it is liberal values that we're talking about, well, that's entirely okay. Because, of course, we live in a postmodern world, or at least some people are trying to turn this into a postmodern world. And by that, I mean that the deconstruction of all things that are sound, that are biblical, that are tradition, postmodernism argues to deconstruct all of those things and reduce them to their common denominator. And interestingly, that common denominator always ends up being sex and race. And so if it is a conservative value that says, maybe you shouldn't have sex out of wedlock, or maybe you should try to avoid being an unwed mother, well, that's a conservative value, and it's based on tradition, evidently, even though we have lots of studies that show that single parent families actually produce poverty. Because it's they end up being a drain on the system and all of that. But it's if it's liberal values you're talking about, well, then those are okay, because Christianity and Judeo-Christian values don't have any place in government. We're told by the liberals, and certainly by the postmodern deconstructionists, that if it is a conservative value and it is based perhaps on Judeo-Christian values, then obviously it has no place in government. And their go-to argument is that, well, we have a separation of church and state. See, the founders never intended to have the church have any influence on government. Well, that argument is exactly the opposite of, and I'll go into this in just a second, but go ahead, Ken.
Yeah,
You have a big book open there.
Some people, as you kind of were leading to, would say the Bible's not relevant anymore. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. All of those people I was talking about.
Ancient ideas
old
that
dusty book.
don't apply anymore. Well, from Isaiah chapter 5, at verse 20, woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who substitute darkness for light and light for darkness, who substitute bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and clever in their own sight. Woe to those who are heroes in drinking wine and valiant men in mixing strong drink, who justify the wicked for a bribe and take away the rights of the ones who are in the right. And it goes on. But if you read through that, if that isn't as relevant today as it was the day it was written,
absolutely.
My name's not Lou Grant.
Well, it's not Lou Grant, but you certainly act like him. But the point is that that liberals and redcoats generally try to rest on their argument that we can't have any Christian or Judeo-Christian influence on government. And from there, it proceeds to this deconstructionist position to where we have to reduce everything to its lowest term because, of course, tradition and family values and conservative values, none of those have any place in government simply because their influences are Judeo-Christian values. But this piece continues, my friends. Listen to this. Quote, the Daily Signal depends. The Daily Signal reports that, according to the judge's decision, other than pretextual declarations at this stage, there is simply no reason to believe that the books were removed because of vulgarity, age inappropriateness, or for legitimate pedagogical, that's teaching, concerns. The board's own email strongly suggests that the book was removed. Book's removal was motivated by the director's commitment to conservative values, Sweeney wrote. The court questions what could be more partisan or political than removing books to further the board's self-described conservative values. All right, so the judge's order really has nothing to do with the books. It has nothing to do with the fact that they may be pornographic. And in Wyoming, and this controversy has kind of waned a little bit, I think. But a couple of years ago, and it started out in Gillette, when some parents found some really inappropriate books in the school library. And it was Cowboy State Politics that decided to do a little research and find out which libraries these books were housed in. And I found that one of the really the worst, I think the most disgusting book I think I've ever tried to read. And I only read like the little sneak peek on Amazon, but it was called Lawn Boy. And it was a graphic depiction of sex between two fourth-grade boys. Okay, it was the most horrible thing that I have ever read in my entire life. Well, I found that book in an elementary school in Carbon County and in several other school libraries across the state. So if that is not pornographic, then I don't know what is, my friends. And you don't have to have conservative values or Judeo-Christian values, or you don't even have to be halfway halfway moderate to understand that that is pornography. There is a reason why we don't have a back history or a back issue collection of Penthouse letters in your local library. Now, usually Penthouse letters didn't have, and I wouldn't know this, of course. I was just told about this, but usually there weren't a lot of pornographic pictures in that magazine. It was a collection of letters, but it was written pornography. So the question is, if these books don't qualify as pornography, then why do the other pieces of alleged literature do? I mean, why is it that the Penthouse letters is porn, but these books, which are clearly sexually graphic, are not? You don't have to have conservative values to look at that and say that A plus B equals C. Every single town in America has an obscenity statute, and every single one of them has the porn magazines behind the counter covered in black plastic, and I'll explain why in just a second.
You're making that same mistake. See,
am I?
You keep applying logic.
Oh, yes.
To liberal ideology.
Yes, I forget.
And that's the problem.
Yeah, that's absolutely the problem. Oh, and by the way, if you want to chime in on this rampant use of logic on the program, the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989. When we come back from the break, we'll continue the discussion. And, it's one of the reasons we may want to have a discussion is men are dominating women's swimming again. It's not just Leah Thomas. Nope, everywhere now. Open Line Friday. When we come back. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow and a half the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election. Siberia,
Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada. Straight to hell. Iceland, France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the past 5 weeks just been more than you could bear? If that's the case, you have come to the right place. All you need to do is call my friend Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property, everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the feeling like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics Live. If you want to be part of the program, the phone number here in the Cowboy State Politics studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989 on Cowboy State Politics Live, Wyoming's most listened to conservative program. Documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. A record that, I don't know. I think that people should aspire to be right most of the time. I mean, you should check your facts and make sure that you're right before you say something. At the very least, try to verify, trust but verify. And if it's a political opinion, make sure that you have some logic behind it, which, of course, is that dirty little word that we're confronting liberals with this morning. Let me give you another one here. Let's see here. I don't know where this one's from. A website called, it's from The Blaze, of course. Man dominates women's swimming event, wins all 5 races he enters. A real-life South Park episode. And I quote, "The swimmer has previously been named the fastest female swimmer in the world over the age of 30. A man who formerly swam against males is now dominating women's swimming. Anna Caldas, who has formerly been known as Hugo and Hannah, trounced his competition at the U.S. Masters Swimming Spring National Championship in San Antonio, Texas over the weekend. According to event records, Caldas competed in the women's 45 to 49 category and took home first place in 5 events: the 50-yard freestyle, the 100-yard freestyle, the 50-yard breaststroke, the 100-yard breaststroke, and the 100-yard individual medley. Caldas won 3 of the races by more than 3 seconds. Okay, now just think about that. 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. Now, I don't know a heck of a lot about swimming or track or any of those events, but as I understand it, if you're winning a race by seconds, it's really not a competition all that much, which kind of begs the question if the person winning the race is actually competing. And I would argue no, because they're not actually a woman. The Independent Council on Women's Sports sent a letter to the U.S. Masters Swimming during the event after Caldas' first win. The group condemned the organization's rules that allow males to compete against women as long as they are on testosterone suppressants. Oh, Lord. I can't even continue with this. It's so stupid that you think that you can change biology that somehow men can become women and women can become men, or a giraffe or a trout or whatever. I mean, it sounds like I'm making fun of this, but I'm really not. Like, if you can claim that you can become a woman if you're a man, that's no different than saying that you can become an elk. I mean, it is absolute insanity, and that people actually believe that these so-called transgender people are actually women. I mean, I'm just flabbergasted, Ken. But I have a reason why.
One verse that might have been left out of Isaiah is, "Woe to those that call men women."
Yes. Well, here's what the left is doing, and if you want to know why they're so intent on convincing you that men can become women, it's because it furthers the relativistic view of the world. And if you can convince anyone that a man can become a woman or that a woman can become a man, you can convince them of anything. And it is absolute deception from the very beginning.
That's exactly what Isaiah was saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
He said, "You don't call darkness light." When you get rid of truth, there you go.
Exactly right. And so, it sounds, when this whole movement got started, I was a little flabbergasted. In fact, I thought it was kind of funny. Growing up, you'd watch comedy skits on TV where men would dress up as women, and it was comedy, right? A lot of the famous comedians did skits on Saturday Night Live and other in Living Color.
Geraldine Jones.
Exactly right. But it was comedy. Well, now we have an entire political movement, and I would say that it was a fringe movement at one time, but it's not really anymore. Well, I guess technically it's still a fringe movement, but there are far more people that believe that that's actually the case. But it all goes back to being able to do you still have that Michelle Obama soundbite from yesterday? Hold on just a second. This is perfect. If our producer, well, when you find it, give me a heads up. So the whole point.
No, I'm sorry, I ditched it. We could bring it back up some other day, but we
Okay.
lost the moment.
Oh, we lost the moment. Well, anyway, the point is that if you can convince people of things that are not true, well, then you can convince them of anything. And it's, oh, wait a minute. Here it is right here. Take a listen to this.
And we owe them the best that we can provide them as a country. And Barack knows that we are going to have to make sacrifices. We are going to have to change our conversation. We're going to have to change our traditions, our history. We're going to have to move into a different place as a nation to provide the kind of future that we all want desperately.
Okay, so to provide the future that we all desperately want. So that begs the question, what exactly is that future that they're talking about? Well, it's a future where facts don't matter, where men can become women, women can become trouts, and trouts can become elk. It's a future that doesn't really make any sense. And so when you are crafting a liberal future, at least the liberal utopia that you have in your mind, you have to convince people of things that just aren't true. That communism works, that socialism is a good idea, that no, that those ideologies haven't resulted in the deaths of millions of people. And the fact is they have. I mean, over the globe, millions upon millions of people have died in the name of socialism. And if that is your end goal, and I would contend that that is the end goal of the left, then you have to start at the very beginning. And what is more basic than whether you are a man or a woman, whether you are a mother or a father? It doesn't get much more basic than that. And so the attempt of the left is to destroy facts, logic, and truth at the very foundation of your beliefs. And if you can rock the foundation of anything, then the house that's built upon it is just going to come crumbling down because there's nothing to support it. There's no basis in fact or truth there.
Okay, it is Open Line Friday, and I'm glad you got that out of your system. But you mentioned elk.
Yes.
Did you know that they're going to bring elk back to the United Kingdom after a 3,000-year absence? But the problem is, and understand my dad or my grandfather being a game warden made it very clear to me from the time I was about 2 years old that I had to be able to properly identify all the animals.
Yes.
And they put up a picture of a moose. Yeah, the reason is in Scandinavian countries, they call moose elk.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, well, it still disturbed me, but yeah, what could go wrong?
Well, so I actually have a funny story about that. The area I used to live in Virginia, I used to live in Southwest Virginia, and they transplanted elk to Southwest Virginia because, frankly, that area of the country is perfect elk country. I mean, when you and I don't, growing up, elk hunting is a big thing in my family. Not so much anymore. Now, if I'm not sitting outside my cabin and happen to have my gun, and then an elk happens to run by me, it's got a pretty good chance of living. But when I was younger, elk hunting was a big deal, and that area of Virginia where I live, perfect elk country. Well, so the Virginia Department of Fish and Game, I don't know what they're actually called, but it's got to be the worst wildlife department in the country. Yeah, if you got one deer license, you could go kill 6 or 7 deer. They didn't care. And then there was no game checkpoints or anything, which is why you never saw a buck deer. But anyway, I'm getting way off topic. So anyway, they transplanted elk into this area, and they forgot to think about the population density of the area and how many of these little valleys and hollers had tobacco farms in them. And what they found is that when the elk started propagating, they grew to big, pretty giant herds. And if you've ever seen a herd of elk get going, they'll run right through a fence, and it looks like a racetrack after they've gone through. And so then they had to set up an open season on elk because their transplant idea failed miserably.
That's exactly what I was getting about. What could go wrong on a little island that is completely established?
Exactly.
You have all the pictures of the folks out there doing their hound hunts and chasing the fox and all of the walls. Okay, now you're going to throw a herd of elk into that.
I know. It's absolutely bizarre. And and that kind of goes to what we're talking about, right? You're reintroducing a species into an environment that they haven't been there for a really long time. And whether you realize it or not, ecosystems adapt very, very quickly. Animals they are able to adapt in a matter of, years. And we're not talking like 10 or 20 or 30 years. Hold on to the break. Let me finish this thought for just a second. But animals adapt. And when you have an absence of an animal for 3,000 years or 300 years, it doesn't really matter how long. It's like introducing an invasive species. You hear all the time on Wyoming radio where we have to get rid of these invasive species. Zebra mussels are one of them. Cheatgrass, we're always fighting against that. That's a big deal in Wyoming, and the reason is it disrupts the environment. When you compare that to what we were just talking about, when you're disrupting the natural order of things, generally it doesn't turn out very good for you. When we come back, I want to talk just briefly about the new Pope. Whether you're Catholic or not, this is kind of a big deal. And he's an American, which is kind of cool. I don't really know that much about him, but we're going to talk about the new Pope for a little bit. So we'll do that when we come back. Open Line Friday. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live. You can listen to the program on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, pretty much everywhere. It's almost like I'm omnipresent. If you miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics Live, you can always go to the live replay, which is located at the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, under the live replay button. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics Live every Tuesday through Friday at 8 a.m. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden, and you can't remember if you had your pudding today? Well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics Live. If you want to be part of the show, the phone number is 307-374-8989. Go ahead and give me a call. If there's something on your mind that you want to opine about, let me know. 307-374-8989. Well, unless you've been living under a rock, you've already heard that we do have a new pope, and he's Pope Leo the 14th, and he is from Chicago. Now, I don't really know that much about him, but anytime you get a new pope, that's a big deal. I mean, there's over 1 billion Catholics in the world, and so that's definitely news. But let's see here. From Breitbart News, Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost of Chicago, and this is the big thing here, is that he is the first American pope. Which, I mean, he spent most of his career in Peru, so it's not like he's been hanging out in Chicago watching the White Sox the entire time, or the Cubs. As I understand it, he's a White Sox fan. I found several pictures of him this morning at White Sox games. But anyway, he was chosen by the College of Cardinals to be the new pope of the Catholic Church, making him the first American pope in the church's 2,000-year history. The Chicago native chose the papal name of Louis XIV. White smoke appeared from the Sistine Chapel at approximately 6:08 Rome time, followed by the chiming of the Vatican bells, which confirmed that a new successor was going to be there, and his name is Pope Leo XIV. So let's go ahead, and right now, Ken, they're talking about the Pope on Fox News. Let's go ahead and pull up Fox News, and I haven't got to play with this bell and whistle yet, so we'll see what they're talking about.
Okay, next question.
Okay, so
towards the center aisle here.
So the Cardinals are talking about the conclave right now. So let's just listen to this for a little bit.
My name is Delia Gallagher.
And this press conference in Rome continues with the American Cardinals as they reflect on the election of Pope Leo XIV from Chicago. And we will continue to monitor that for news, but we'll get you to this now. John?
Reflection of.
Will you apologize to President Trump for wasting millions of dollars and the state of New York for a witch trial? And how does it feel to know?
Really? Really? Why can we not have a press conference on one topic without one of these idiots?
Some bells and whistles aren't so great.
That bell and whistle didn't work out so hot for me. I mean, well, now they've switched over to Letitia James, and absolutely revolting, my friends. And we can't have any conversation about anything without these whack jobs chiming in with their inane political rhetoric. And the thing is, I've discovered why liberals are so crazy right now, because every single thing that the Democrat Party has tried, every single move that they've made on the chessboard, every single one of them has failed. And so the only thing they have left is outrage. And it doesn't really matter what that outrage is. I'm sure that many of you have been on Facebook and you've seen all the comments, and a lot of them just go into this space where they just don't make any sense. You know, Trump thinks that he's going to be a dictator. Okay, the truth is, he did say that, okay, in one sentence. But if you take the entire conversation in context, that's not what he meant. Liberals, they don't think that way. Everything is outrage to them. And a lot of it is feigned outrage. And let me tell you why they do that. Because it is an attempt to control the speech of others, right? If you can be so outraged at anything that somebody said, the hope is that you'll shut them up. That normal thinking people just don't want to deal with your bull crap. And so they'll continue their outrage, and a lot of it is fake. a lot of these liberals really don't believe it unless they are seriously suffering from a case of Trump derangement syndrome. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. You know, Ken, I wanted to talk about the Pope. Apparently, I don't even get to do that on Open Line Friday.
Saul Alinsky at work.
Yeah, absolutely it is. By the way, we need to get Chris Adamo back on the show. Chris Adamo is a friend of the program. He wrote this book called Rules for Defeating Radicals. He's been on the show a couple of different times, and I think he probably have a lot to say about what's going on here. But do me a favor, Mr. Producer, and see if you can get a hold of him, and we'll get him on the show.
So noted.
So noted. Now, we haven't done a little bit of history in a while, and I found this article. It is Victory in Europe Day, if you didn't know. So we have a lot of different holidays, or, I guess, holidays with the quotation marks surrounding World War II. But VE Day is Victory in Europe Day. And this is a fascinating story, to me anyway, about the journalist that broke the story. And it's a guy named Kennedy. So let me just read this to you. Until his death, Kennedy stated that he never regretted the actions he took upon Germany's surrender. And basically what happened is he was the first guy to break the news that the Germans had surrendered. And Dwight D. Eisenhower himself ordered basically a lid on all the press. And the reason for it is Joseph Stalin wanted to have a photo op, basically, and show that he had some influence on Germany's surrender. And so Eisenhower put a lid on everything and demanded that none of the journalists break the news that Germany had already surrendered. Here's the irony. Germany ended up surrendering twice because of Joseph Stalin. Let me continue here. Here is the note he put on the wire, and he got cut off, but here's what he got out. Quote, "This is Ed Kennedy in Paris. The war is over, and I'm going to dictate. Germany has surrendered unconditionally," the war correspondent said, according to an account of the call by Tom Curley, the Associated Press's former president. "That's official. Make the date line reams and get it out." With that wire, the AP war correspondent Edward Kennedy landed the biggest scoop of his career while simultaneously ruining it. He got fired for reporting the news. Only able to dictate about 200 words before the connection was lost, Kennedy's news was about the conclusion of the world's largest and bloodiest conflict, traveled with such speed that inquiries were received in Paris even before he was cut off, according to the New York Times. As one of 17 war correspondents to witness the official German surrender in Reims, France, in the early hours of May 7th of 1945, Kennedy naturally sought to file post haste. However, the news remained embargoed, and this is what I was getting to, with military handlers insisting that the momentous occasion be kept secret for several hours. As the correspondents returned to their lodgings at the Hotel Scribe in Paris that day, the embargo was extended for another 24 hours without any explanation. Quote, "We were 17 trained SEALs," Kennedy caustically recalled in his memoir, Ed Kennedy's War, VE Day, Censorship, and the Associated Press. The embargo was not, Kennedy learned, for security reasons, which might have been an acceptable rationale, but for political ones. It turned out that Russia's leader, Joseph Stalin, wanted to stage a signing ceremony of his own to claim partial credit for the surrender, and the U.S. officials were interested in helping him have his moment of glory. After hearing that the German High Command had broadcasted the surrender from its headquarters in Flensburg, Germany on May 7th, Kennedy bristled. Quote, "For 5 years, you've been saying that the only reason for censorship was men's lives. Now the war is over. I saw the surrender myself. Why can't the story go?" he reportedly told a clerk at the hotel censor's office. They had censors around all of the press. The censor replied that he did not have the authority to release Kennedy's story. Quote, "All right, then. I give you fair warning here and now. I'm going to file it." Now, the retribution on Kennedy was pretty swift. However, he was stripped of his war credentials, and the war correspondent was then ordered home by the Allied leadership. Now, think about that. The military was in control of the press at that time. And it was those in charge that told this reporter that he had to go home. Think about that. Now, we try to think of America as this place that reveres the First Amendment, that the press has freedom, that it is, so much so that the press is supposed to be like the fourth leg of government, the fourth branch of government, rather. And it's not really the case. And historically, it really hasn't been the case either. Oftentimes, the press is, or there's an attempt to muzzle the press for the behest of those who are in positions of political power. And it's either because a reporter walked into the room and caught them with their hands up a skirt, or because there's some lie that they don't want exposed that's going to, be not look very favorable on them. But the freedom of the press really has not been revered by people in positions of power. And by the way, that continues to this day. But anyway, let's get back to Kennedy for a second. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I just, there's the recent flap about NPR and public TV. If you think about it even for a second, and I'm sure that everybody listening probably has, you don't bite the hand that feeds you.
Yeah.
And the press is supposed to be a check and balance on the government.
Yep.
To keep things transparent, to keep things out in the open. That's what they're there for. But if you realize that you anger the wrong people, there dries up your funding, there dries up your livelihood. What could possibly go wrong there?
Well, exactly right. And the problem there is, specifically with NPR and public radio, is they should have never been publicly funded anyway. I mean, that is a recipe for censorship.
We should have just called them Pravda from the beginning.
We should have. I mean, and it's either passive censorship or it's active censorship. Let me explain the difference. Passive censorship is that you have some influence on you, right? That you're not going to report things honestly because you are working at the behest of somebody else, right? They're paying your bills. They're the people that feed you, whatever. It doesn't really matter, but there's some reason why you're not reporting on them. The other one is active censorship, like we're talking about in this piece with Kennedy and World War II, that they were told, no, you can't publish that. That's overt censorship. It's active censorship.
There's a third one that is probably less prevalent, except maybe through the White House, regardless of who's in there, and that's creative censorship. I remember hearing from people firsthand who had gone into Iraq from Kuwait during Desert Storm, and they got there before CNN was set up. And CNN actually came to the commanders and said, could you take your people back to this point and come back across our camera view one more time? And they did it.
Wow. Incredible. So here is the other problem with this, is that you can't unring a bell. And I mean this in two ways. That first, that people in positions of power, whether it be perceived power or actual power, know that once a story is out, you can't bring it back. I mean, I'm sure you could print a retraction, I suppose, but once that bell is rung, you can't bring it back. And so whatever actions they're engaged in, whether rightly or wrongly, once it gets out, that's it. And the proverbial cat is out of the bag. Well, the other thing with this is once you damage somebody's reputation, that's it, right? There's nothing that you can do to fix that. So in 67 years after Kennedy filed that report and after he was fired by the Associated Press for doing the job of a journalist, reporting what's actually happening, the AP finally issued an apology after 67 years. Think about the ridiculousness of this. Quote, "It was a terrible day for the AP, and it was handled in the worst way possible. Once the war is over, you can't hold back information like that. The world needed to know. The apology was accompanied by a push from journalists to award the posthumous Pulitzer Prize to Kennedy. Although nominated for the prize in 2013, the World War II reporter failed to win the award. However, think about that. 2013, he didn't win a Pulitzer for doing that. That tells you the suppression that happens inside the press itself. Let's see here. However, as USA Today reported, quote, Pulitzer Prizes don't prohibit resubmissions, and there have been several pushes in recent years for Kennedy's recognition. Kennedy died in 1963 after being struck by a car. He didn't live to see any sort of vindication, but it took 67 years for those people in power, and I mean political power, and I mean at the Associated Press, to finally admit that they had made a mistake. The truth is, my friends, that whether we like them or not, an honest journalist is absolutely necessary. There are things that you need to know about your government and the groups that surround them. And if you're muzzled, if there's an attempt to muzzle you, well, you got to stop it. You got to stand up. That's what this program does, and I'll continue to do. I hope some people are listening.
Here at U.S. Coin Capital, we hear from Americans across the United States who have a growing concern about the future purchasing power of U.S. paper money. Many Americans are looking for an alternative for long-term capital. For more than 35 years, the people at U.S. Coin Capital have educated American investors on how to properly accumulate United States gold and silver coins. Call us at 1-800-878-2646 or visit us on the web, uscoincapital.com.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics.
Some say standing up for what you believe in is being extreme. Ask any woman in Wyoming. They'll tell you this is called courage. The mainstream media claims that holding the line on important issues is being unreasonable. My mom taught me this is called staying true to our principles. In other places, people argue you always have to compromise to get something done. Here in Wyoming, we know that some things are worth protecting at all costs. Some say it's time we give up on the values that made our state great to accommodate toxic culture. I say it's time to stand tall and protect the values that have served Wyoming well for over 134 years. Join Honor Wyoming as we defend and preserve the Wyoming way of life. Find out how you can make a difference today.
Visit honorwyoming.org. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live, coming to you from the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Before I forget, I probably need to give you a little update on next week. Tuesday's broadcast, we'll be back in the original Cowboy State Politics studio. My producer, he's got to go off and do some, I don't know, government thing or whatever. He's screwing around in Laramie. I don't even know what he's doing. Hanging out with the liberals. We need to have a liberal inquisition when he gets back. Find out if he's actually been inundated by all of the insanity down there.
Trust me, there will be a hot shower at the very least.
Well, I will scrub you down, maybe use some lye. It's terrible. Honestly, I was at the University of Wyoming for the Charlie Kirk event, and I was absolutely offended. Here's why. Walking to the building where the event was held, there was this back staircase, and it was behind a couple of buildings, and there were statues along the walkway. And again, it was in between two buildings, not a great thoroughfare, not a main staircase leading to a building. It was in some back part of the university, and here there are statues, and it's all wonderfully landscaped, and those people have way too much money. It is absolutely offensive, the amount of money that is spent at the University of Wyoming. And when you walk to like anywhere on the campus, the buildings are pretty incredible. I mean, but the new ones they built, holy crap, do they have a lot of money. Speaking of college professors, a piece from Breitbart News, and it's entitled Stefanik Rips College President Using a Cheat Sheet in Anti-Semitism Hearing. This isn't leadership, it's cowardice, Elise Stefanik says, and I quote, Representative Elise Stefanik laid into a college president Thursday for relying on flashcards to answer questions surrounding campus anti-Semitism. And hold on just a second, and let me just show you what there we go. There we go. Put this up there. There we go. There are the cheat sheets or the flashcards. Let me just read you a couple of them if you can't see them online. Responses to specific phrases or hypotheticals. Calls for genocide. Yes, they're abhorrent and it violates our policies. River to the sea. Does that violate policy? Yes. Any threat or effort to intimidate or harass students violates our policies. Is Israel a genocidal state? No. But these are all questions that any college professor should be able, anybody should be able to answer. It doesn't take a college professor to give an honest answer to that. And that said college professor needs these stupid flashcards is absolutely ridiculous. Unlike presidents testifying, Raymond repeatedly refused to detail punishments for students and faculty accused of anti-Semitism. But perhaps most astoundingly, Raymond required a cheat sheet to guide her through her incredibly wooden answers, or non-answers, as the case may be. Quote, it is deeply disturbing, the president of Haverford, which is where this professor was, or the president was from, who leads an institution of higher education, arrived at a hearing on anti-Semitism armed with a flashcard instead of conviction, Stefanik told Breitbart News. Nobody should need notes to remember that evil calls for genocide are abhorrent. The use of flashcards or cheat sheets beyond documents containing statistics and data is incredibly rare for witnesses testifying before congressional hearings, particularly on such a charged matter as anti-Semitism. Quote, this isn't leadership, it's cowardice, Stefanik's statement concluded. Students deserve better than rehearsed responses. And it just shows you the vapidness of a lot of these college professors, that they were probably elevated to their position through politics, and that it really doesn't have anything to do with their ability or their genius or the work that they've done. It's all politics. And, throw up the slide one more time, Ken. That a college professor has to have this to honestly testify before a committee. Wait, there's that word, honesty. What this shows you is that the professor was not testifying honestly, and that's why a cheat sheet was necessary. But when you're living around government and your livelihood is dependent upon government, what else do you expect? Let's see here, another piece here. This one is blew my mind too. The Trump Department of Energy cancels a $4.5 million Biden-era contract to develop, wait for it, just wait for it, a green energy logo. Now, I don't know how adept you are at Facebook, but yesterday, Photoshop, yesterday, Agent 29 and I sat down and whipped up a really quick logo for his new show. Well, it's not really new, but I guess it's a resurgence of Locked and Loaded. By the way, while we're on the topic, why don't you tell the audience about your show? Locked and Loaded, Representative Tony Locke, who's chairman of the Money Committee, Revenue. He and I get together and we discuss issues, and it's a good show. His name is Locke, so we call it Locked and Loaded. There's the logo. Pretty tough to concoct that. I think it probably cost me nothing. I did order a banner. That's going to cost me $21. Okay, all right. Do you need a $4.5 million grant to develop a new one? No, but if you'd offered it, I'd have taken it. Well, exactly right. And so did this contractor to develop said logo. And I quote, the Department of Energy canceled a $4.5 million contract the Biden administration awarded to develop a new agency website and logo, symbolically highlighting the green energy transition, according to the Washington Free Beacon. Former President Joe Biden's Department of Energy awarded the contract to the Native American firm Cherokee Nation Strategic Programs, which is classified as a minority-owned business. I don't even want to read the rest of this. If you need $4.5 million to develop a website and a logo, we are spending way too much damn money.
What did you spend on yours? Do you know?
Nothing. Well, I guess that's not exactly
Well, you got
true.
a banner that probably cost you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, yearly, we're probably talking about a couple $100.
Yeah.
The Cowboy State Politics website is kind of big. So.
Yeah, I have about 3 different websites out there. They probably wouldn't be that much better with $4.5 million.
No, but we would have a heck of a lot of fun making it.
Yeah, I'd be riding in style.
Yeah, we would have our own website studio. Anyway, my friends, we pretty much burned up another busy broadcast hour on the program. Make sure that you don't miss weekend update on the podcast. It'll be published tomorrow morning around 10 o'clock. All depends on, if I get my butt out of bed and do it, or, get some work done this morning. Anyway, tomorrow on the podcast, weekend update. And of course, we'll be back on Tuesday for Cowboy State Politics Live. Have a good weekend, my friends. From Sheridan, I'm David Iverson.